The point I try and make in my book, China Shakes the World, is that the various expressions of China's ecological frailties, plus the pressure of a huge population on scarce natural resources, have become the animating energies behind several global trends. And in the short time since I wrote the book, those trends have only intensified and become more worrying to environmentalists. Probably the most important of these is the shortage of water. This problem has been widely reported, including by Jennifer in many of her works, also by Elizabeth Economy in The River Runs Black. But I still sometimes feel that the gravity of this issue may not be fully comprehended either within China or beyond its borders. According to Andy Rothman, who's an analyst at CLSA, the brokerage house, only 1/4 of the world's per capita water supply, and in the north of the country, significantly less. China only has 1/4 of the world's per capita water supply. And in some areas, it has a supply of water which is less than Israel or Yemen. And Tianjin, which I'm sure you all know is a port close to Beijing, has a per capita water supply less than that of Saudi Arabia. In addition, more than half of China's rivers are too polluted to be a source of drinking water, and 1/4 are so poisonous they can't even be used for industry. Around 136 cities in the north face severe water shortages. The irresponsible and often unregulated pumping of groundwater has meant that areas around where I live on the outskirts of Beijing, groundwater levels are falling by 2 to 3 meters a year. Already in several overseas expressions of this water problem are evident. The most obvious comes in China's growing need for foreign agricultural produce as its ability to feed itself declines. Of its cultivated land, around 65% is north of the Yangtze, and most of the wheat, maize, soybeans, and cotton are grown in the north, which only has 20% of the country's water resources. The impact of this can already be seen in China's voracious demand for imported soybeans. And an effect of that is that the Amazon rainforest is being cleared by an area roughly the size of Belgium each year, partly to supply soybeans to China. Similar effects could be felt with other crops such as wheat, barley, and maize in the future, but probably not rice, which is regarded as particularly crucial to China's food security. Another use for water is as a source for power generation. And this is also a key external expression in the area of the Mekong, upon which tens of millions of people depend for their livelihoods in Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos. But upstream in China, where the river is called the Lancang, the demands for rapid urbanization and industrialization has fostered a dam building spree. 2 dams have already been built in Yunnan province, 2 more are under construction, and a further 4 have been designed. Nor are these dams small. One of them, called the Xiaowan, is to be second only in size to the Three Gorges Dam that spans the Yangtze River. The effects of these dams on the downstream riparian states has been predictable. The flow of water downstream has been greatly reduced. From January to March 2004, the Mekong reached a record low in its flows. One marine policeman in Thailand said that in that year, he could walk across the river from Thailand to Laos. In addition, fish have had difficulty spawning when the waters are low, a factor that has seriously reduced fish catches in Cambodia, where millions depend on river fish for their livelihoods. So far, this issue has been a low-intensity political issue between China and the other riparian states. But Beijing has declined to participate in clear water usage agreements and quotas with its neighbors. So the possibility of future tension is significant. A third external expression of China's environmental malaise is in the area of air pollution. Not only has the air quality in Hong Kong and South Korea, I'm sure many of you have visited those places, been severely affected, but also the US Environmental Protection Agency has said that on some days, 25% of the particulate matter in the skies above Los Angeles come from China. This is something that the Chinese dispute, but without having conducted their own study. Some US experts claim that 1/3 of all Californian airborne pollution comes from China. Certainly, China's coal burning, the main source of sulfur dioxide, the key cause of acid rain, is enormous. As the country has added enough electricity capacity to power a whole country the size of Spain every year in recent years, the consumption of coal has risen to 2 billion tons a year. That's up 800 million tons since the end of, in the 5 years to the end of 2005. That is, for example, about 6 times the amount of coal burned by a country like Australia. And because coal is so much cheaper than other fuels, this heavy reliance will not change in the foreseeable future. In addition, China is said to spew about 600 tons of mercury into the atmosphere every year. And around that's about 1/4 of the entire world's natural emissions. Non-natural emissions. The effect of a rising China on the world's forests is even more palpable. In 1998, the response to flooding down the Yangtze River, China placed several restrictions on logging. At the same time, it became the world's largest furniture maker and paper manufacturer. The result has been ruinous for the world's forests. Much of the logging to feed China's appetite is illegal and falls outside quotas set down by exporting countries. Russia is the biggest supplier these days, mainly with spruce, fir, Scots pine and oak from non-renewable Siberian boreal forests. In many cases, these trees took 400 to 500 years to grow in frigid tundra temperatures. In Indonesia too, an area the size of Switzerland is illegally logged each year to supply hardwoods to feed China's home-building boom. In a similar vein, Chinese demand for fish is putting strain on world's fish stocks, and yet, as with everything, per capita consumption is still low in China at around 21 kilograms per person per year, compared to 56 kilograms per person per year in Hong Kong. The problem is that for each extra kilogram per person increase in China, some 100 million tons of fish have to be caught in the world's fisheries and oceans. Herein lies one of the key restraining factors behind China's development. Chinese people are only really wanting some of the same action that Americans and Europeans take for granted. They want a piece of the American dream. But simple mathematics suggests that it will not be possible if Chinese were to consume oil, for example, at the same rate as Americans. We would need 3 times the current annual global production. The same is true of several other finite resources. In the words of Liang Congjie, who is the head of Friends of Nature, it's an NGO in Beijing, we are going to need 4 planets to accommodate the appetites of a resurgent China. Until such time as those planets become available, the world will have to find an alternative solution. But so far, there seems to be scant recognition of the problem, let alone any solutions. From the perspective of the West, our governments remain resistant to any acceptance that China's environmental problems are partly of our making. After all, China is the manufacturing workshop in which most of the things that we buy are made. In the words of